What's the city's procedure when it receives notice that a complaint has been filed with the EEOC for sexual harassment? In general.
That procedure consists of, that information is received in the Department of Personnel and forwarded to the Office of the City Attorney, who's responsible for handling those matters.
If the city attorney is the attorney for both the city council and the city as a whole, why don't we get notice when the city receives an EEOC complaint? Because we didn't get notice that there was an EEOC complaint of this nature pending.
James Anderson, City Attorney's Office. I'm not aware of there being a situation where notice of any type of complaint, EEOC or otherwise, has been purposely withheld. Day-to-day complaints, grievances, and so forth are received by the administration or the City Attorney's Office, that the governing authorities are not precluded from having knowledge of those things. If there's a request to be briefed on those specific items, that we can see if there's any obstacle toward doing that. But as far as I know, since I've been here, there hasn't been any discussion by this city attorney or previous city attorneys about not disclosing that to governing authorities.
These two items on the agenda, how long has legal been officially involved in?
I'm personally not aware of how long our office has known about those. EEOC matters, of course, when you get an EEOC complaint, that's your official notice that something's wrong or something, an allegation's been made, and so that's the notice that comes to our office. Usually those are received, as stated by Director McKay through personnel, and then brought to our office and assigned to an attorney. As to the number of those matters or that are done that way, I'm not aware of those.
I'm sorry, just one second. What I'm requesting, I think what Councilwoman Simone is requesting as well, is that if we are to go into executive session, and we very well may, the probability of that is high, that we will go into executive session. We have two items before us, two potential litigation matters, potentially more, that we're going to discuss, and there's been a response that's been written on the city's behalf. All I'm asking is that for at least the two matters that we are going to discuss today, potentially in executive session, to have our responses ready for us when we go into executive session so we can read those responses. And we are in the 21st century, so it's simply a phone call and a request to email the document to wherever it needs to be so we can have it printed off and it can be to us. We don't have to walk across town. If we need a recess so that it can be obtained, then we can do that as well. So thank you so much, Councilwoman Simone and Councilman Tiller.
That document, I don't know whether it's in the room at present. I don't know. It's not matters that I deal with.
Oh, I understand.
So
I understand. We have cell phones and email.
To be totally transparent on any case that the city is involved in, that the city council and in the mayor's office, the governing authorities, that any information in those cases, of course, is open to you all and you all only.
Thank you. So
but as to whether those are going to be available at the drop of a hat, I cannot say in particular, in as much as I'm not handling that matter.
Who's handling that?
Right now, Yarber is the special assistant who is dealing with litigation.
Okay.
What I would suggest the council do is to initiate a session to talk about the litigation.
Yes, sir, I understand. And let's do it.
Under the 14th Amendment, Title VII, that as these cases move along, that the city at some point, and I've never dealt with something quite as complicated as this in my years here, but that the city has to submit a written position in response to this case, is that right?
That's my understanding.
Has that written position been,
Again, I'm not going to discuss the specifics of any particular
well,
case.
as I understand it, the city's written position means that that is no longer a confidential matter.
Again, I'm not going to discuss any specifics of a particular case in that it involves.
Is that your understanding, that if the city has a written position on this Title VII case, that it then becomes no longer confidential?
No, that's not my understanding, Councilman Barrett Simon. My understanding is that matters between the city attorney's office and its client, which involves the governing authority, those are confidential matters. As far as whether such matters may be disclosable through some other avenue, remains to be seen. But as far as being disclosed from our office to outside sources, that's something that the attorneys do not do. Attorneys do not disclose complaints, discovery matters, confidential settlement memorandums, or any other type of documents to third parties or outside parties.
I did a lot of investigation on this because I've never really dealt with a case exactly like this with so many conflicts involved. And my concern was, as I stated when we got here this morning, is that I wanted to be sure as to why we were being asked to go into executive session. If the city has a written position on this, it is my understanding, and I've checked this with people and I respect you, Mr. Anderson, I always have. I think you're in a big fix this morning. But that written position then makes this no longer a confidential. It's not the complainant. She's gone public. There's no complainant. And the city has a written position in response to this lawsuit. It is my information that is no longer a confidential document.
Councilman Barrett Simone.
Factual basis that's known to the city at the time doesn't warrant a recusal until the facts known at the time. That's the only way to basic recusal.
Let me be really frank. The EEOC complaint in Ms. Bracey's case was filed October of 2015. I find it very disturbing that people in the city attorney's office and personnel would know of a complaint of this nature and not at least give a heads up to the city council that there was a claim of this nature. Whether or not the claim is true or not is secondary to the fact of a very serious complaint has been lodged. The city must have had knowledge of it because of the way the EEOC procedure works, and it was compartmentalized. And so I think that further indicates the extent to which there is not a theoretical, but an active conflict of interest between the city and the city attorney's office in the prosecution and defense of this matter.
And James Anderson, city attorney's office, in reference to EEOC complaints, I am aware those complaints are usually referred to one of our attorneys in our office and dealt with accordingly. That has been the process for several years in our office in reference to when an issue of conflict arises, even on those situations, those are taken very seriously, and those matters in which
It does not come directly to me. It goes to the EEO officer.
Okay, because one of my other concerns is, and this is just from folks I represent, when they connect the dots and say, well, chief of staff, her sister's the personnel director, and her cousin is the lawyer. So, that leaves some room for some questions to be asked. And
Let me just say this.
In this forum right here, we need to answer those questions for the people.
I take my job seriously. I will not do nothing to jeopardize the city. If there's anything that deals with a relative, I recuse myself from the process completely.
Because, as the president said, right, you gave the really one and only concise budgets this time. James, you do a great job as a lawyer. I depend on you a lot. So
We'll make sure that's in the minutes.
I depend on you a lot. But in this case, it just makes you kind of step back from our normal procedure and our normal confidences because of the confidence, you know, and so under traditional circumstances, I can take what you say to the bank, I can take what you say to the bank. Under these circumstances, it gives you pause, and that's why some of the uneasiness is here. That's why I would really wish that the chief of staff, the lawyer, the city attorney, and the mayor were here so that you two wouldn't be in this, but they would be able to just answer questions, just basic questions, like, you know, so before you speak, could you just do me an open records request for travel for these employees for 2000, what year was that, 15, 14? I appreciate it, thank you. I'll pay for it myself.
Councilman Stamps, to save you a few bucks on that, as the governing authorities, those documents are within you all's purview to take these opinions regarding that.